Commander Zephyx of the Galactic Council Survey Fleet stared at the long-range sensors with all four of his compound eyes. Something massive was drifting through the empty space between star systems, far from any known trade routes or inhabited worlds. The object appeared to be artificial, but its design was unlike anything in the Council's extensive databases. "Increase magnification," Zephyx ordered his bridge crew aboard the exploration vessel, Stellar Wisdom. The main viewing screen flickered and resolved into a clearer image of the mysterious object. What they saw made several crew members burst into laughter. The thing looked like an enormous metal brick floating through space. It was gray, angular, and completely lacking in the elegant curves and bioorganic designs that marked proper starship construction. Crude rectangular sections jutted out at random angles, connected by what appeared to be simple welded joints. The entire structure looked like it had been assembled by children playing with building blocks. "By the 7 moons of Cathari," wheezed Engineer Trylock, his breathing slits fluttering with amusement. "What primitive species built that monstrosity? It looks like they took scrap metal and just stuck it together with hope and prayer." Navigator Essex, a tall, crystalline being from the inner systems, chimed in with crystalline laughter that sounded like wind chimes in a storm. "Look at those propulsion units. They're actual chemical rockets. I haven't seen anything so backward since we discovered the ruins on Proxima 7. Whoever built this thing must have barely mastered fire." Science Officer Kalen, whose tentacles were dancing with scientific curiosity, ran a preliminary scan of the vessel. "The construction materials are interesting, though. Basic iron and steel alloys, some aluminum composites. Very simple, very crude, but surprisingly durable for such primitive metallurgy." Commander Zephyx studied the readouts flowing across his command console. The ship was indeed massive, almost 2 kilometers in length, but it showed no signs of life or active systems. It appeared to be nothing more than a derelict hulk drifting through the void. Still, protocol required investigation of any unknown vessels, especially ones this size. "Begin approach procedures," he commanded, "but maintain safe distance. Even primitive vessels can be dangerous if they're carrying unstable fuel or weapons." As the Stellar Wisdom moved closer, more details became visible. The alien ship's hull was scarred and pitted, clearly having endured centuries or perhaps millennia of micrometeorite impacts and radiation exposure. Strange symbols and markings covered various sections of the hull, but they were too weathered to make out clearly. "Commander," called communications specialist Vorthon, "I'm detecting some very faint energy signatures from the vessel. It appears to have some kind of backup power system still functioning, though at minimal levels." The closer they got, the more primitive the ship appeared. The hull plating was held together with actual rivets and welding seams, techniques so archaic that most Council species had abandoned them before they even achieved spaceflight. The sensor arrays looked like crude metal dishes and rods, completely unlike the sophisticated quantum sensors used by modern vessels. "I'm reading what might be weapon systems," reported Tactical Officer Nereth, his scaled hide rippling with disdain. "They appear to be kinetic projectile launchers. Can you imagine? They literally plan to throw pieces of metal at their enemies. How wonderfully primitive." This drew fresh laughter from the bridge crew. Kinetic weapons had been obsolete for thousands of years, ever since the development of plasma and energy-based armaments. The idea of hurling chunks of metal through space seemed almost quaint. "The engines are even more amusing," added Trylock, studying the propulsion systems. "Chemical combustion drives, possibly nuclear thermal rockets. The fuel requirements must have been enormous. They probably needed to carry more fuel than cargo just to move this thing anywhere." Commander Zephyx was beginning to feel almost sorry for whatever species had built this vessel. It was clear they had tried their best with the limited technology available to them. but the result was a ship that wouldn't last 5 minutes in combat against even the most basic Council patrol vessel. "Sir," interrupted Sensor Specialist Korth, "I'm detecting something unusual. The ship appears to have artificial gravity systems, but they're not using gravitic generators. The readings suggest they achieved it through rotation. The entire ship spins to create centrifugal force." This revelation brought even more laughter. Spinning ships to create artificial gravity was a technique so primitive it was usually mentioned only in history classes about the earliest days of spaceflight. "How delightfully backward," commented Essex. "Imagine the engineering nightmares of building a rotating ship that size. The stress on the hull structure must be enormous. It's amazing the thing hasn't torn itself apart." As they conducted their initial survey, the crew of the Stellar Wisdom continued to discover new examples of the primitive technology. The communication arrays were simple radio transmitters and receivers. The life support systems appeared to rely on mechanical air recycling rather than bioatmospheric processors. Even the lighting systems seemed to use basic electrical illumination instead of bioluminescent panels. "I'm detecting what might be crew quarters," reported Kalen, his tentacles working over the science console. "The spaces are ridiculously large by our standards. These beings must have been quite inefficient in their use of space. Modern Council ships could house 10 times as many crew members in the same volume." The general consensus on the bridge was that they had discovered the derelict vessel of some long-extinct species that had achieved spaceflight briefly before dying out, probably due to their technological limitations. It was not uncommon to find such relics drifting through space, remnants of civilizations that had reached for the stars but lacked the knowledge or wisdom to succeed. "Well," said Commander Zephyx finally, "we should board and investigate." Even primitive technology can sometimes offer insights into different approaches to engineering problems, and we need to identify which species built this thing for our historical records. "Should we call for an archaeological team?" asked Kalen. "This seems like it might be of interest to the Council's Xenoarchaeology Department." Zephyx considered this. "Not yet. Let's do a preliminary investigation first. If we find anything particularly interesting, we can always request specialist support later." The boarding party was assembled quickly. Commander Zephyx would lead the team personally, accompanied by Science Officer Kalen, Engineer Trilok, and 2 security officers. They would take a shuttle over to the derelict and attempt to find an airlock or create an entry point. As they prepared for departure, the crew continued to marvel at the primitive vessel. It had become something of a source of entertainment, with various crew members pointing out new examples of backward technology and making jokes about the poor species that had built it. "I wonder if they even had faster-than-light travel?" mused Navigator Essex. "This thing looks like it was designed for purely sublight journeys. They might have spent generations traveling between stars." "If they could even reach other stars," added Tactical Officer Nareth. "Those engines look barely capable of escaping a planetary gravity well, let alone achieving interstellar velocities." The shuttle bay was filled with chatter and laughter as the boarding party suited up for their investigation. Everyone was curious to see what other primitive technologies they might discover inside the ancient derelict. "Remember," Commander Zephyx told his team as they climbed into the shuttle, "we're dealing with an unknown species and unknown technology. Even if it appears primitive, we should take appropriate precautions. Some of the most dangerous artifacts in Council space have come from technologically backward civilizations." But privately, even Zephyx found it hard to imagine this particular derelict posing any real threat. It looked more like a museum piece than a ship that had ever been capable of serious space travel. The shuttle separated from the Stellar Wisdom and approached the ancient vessel. Up close, the primitive construction was even more apparent. The hull plates were of varying sizes and thicknesses, clearly manufactured using different processes and probably at different times. The whole ship looked like it had been built over many years, perhaps decades, with components added as they became available. "Look at those docking ports," observed Trilok as they searched for a way inside. "They're mechanical compression seals, not energy barriers, and they're huge. The engineering tolerance requirements must have been nightmare to maintain." They found what appeared to be a maintenance airlock on the ship's side. The controls were simple mechanical switches and dials, labeled with symbols that looked almost like mathematical notation rather than proper writing. "I think I can figure out the operating mechanism," said Kalen, studying the airlock controls with several of his tentacles. "It's purely mechanical, probably pneumatic. Very simple, very robust, but incredibly crude by our standards." The airlock cycled slowly, taking several minutes to complete its operation. When the inner door finally opened, the boarding party found themselves in a chamber that was both familiar and alien. It was clearly designed for bipedal beings roughly similar in size to humans. But the technology was unlike anything they had seen before. The corridor beyond the airlock was lit by harsh white lights that cast sharp shadows everywhere. The walls were covered with pipes, cables, and mechanical systems, all exposed rather than hidden behind elegant panels. Everything looked functional, but utterly without aesthetic consideration. "It's like they built this ship inside out," whispered Trilok. "All the infrastructure is visible. Don't they believe in covering their equipment?" As they moved deeper into the ship, they continued to find evidence of the builder's primitive but determined approach to space travel. Emergency equipment was stored in simple mechanical lockers. Information displays were basic flat screens showing text and simple graphics. Even the gravity felt different, less smooth and consistent than the artificial gravity systems they were used to. But despite its primitive nature, the ship felt solid, well-built, and surprisingly spacious. Whatever species had constructed it had clearly put enormous effort into making it functional and durable, even if they lacked the sophisticated technology available to Council civilizations. The boarding party had no idea that their discovery would soon challenge everything they thought they knew about technological development in the galaxy. The bridge of the derelict ship was unlike anything the Council team had ever seen. Instead of the smooth, organic curves and integrated systems they were accustomed to, they found themselves in a chamber filled with individual control stations, each one clearly designed for specific functions. Dozens of screens, switches, buttons, and mechanical controls covered every surface. "By the spiral nebula," breathed Kalen, his tentacles recoiling slightly. "How did they even operate this thing? There must be thousands of individual controls here." Commander Zephyx studied the captain's chair, which was positioned in the center of the bridge, with a commanding view of all the stations. It was a simple mechanical seat with basic padding, nothing like the bio-responsive command interfaces used in modern ships. Yet something about its design suggested careful thought and practical experience. "Commander," called Trilok from one of the side stations, "I'm finding something very strange here. These computer systems are using binary processing, but the complexity levels are far higher than anything we've seen from primitive civilizations. Look at this." He had managed to activate one of the dormant terminals using the ship's backup power. The screen flickered to life, displaying streams of data in symbols that none of them could read. But the sheer volume and complexity of the information was startling. "That's not possible," said Kalen, moving closer to examine the display. "Binary processing is incredibly inefficient. To achieve this level of data complexity, using such primitive computational methods would require massive amounts of processing power. The energy requirements alone should have been prohibitive." Science Officer Kalen began connecting his portable analysis equipment to the ship's systems, trying to extract more information. What he found made his tentacles writhe with confusion. "Commander, I'm reading construction dates from these systems. But this can't be right. According to these timestamps, this ship was built over 1,000 years ago." A silence fell over the boarding party. 1,000 years ago, the Galactic Council had been in its infancy. Most member species had only recently achieved faster-than-light travel. The idea that some unknown civilization had been building massive starships at that time was deeply unsettling. "Check your readings," ordered Commander Zephyx. "There must be an error in the translation protocols." Kalen worked frantically over his instruments, running the data through multiple analysis systems, but every test confirmed the same impossible result. "Sir, I've triple-checked everything. These construction dates are consistent across multiple ship systems. This vessel was definitely built approximately 1,000 years ago. But that's not the most disturbing part." He paused, his tentacles trembling slightly. "According to the navigational logs I'm accessing, this ship didn't just travel between nearby star systems. It came from a region of space that's over 50,000 light-years away. The journey to reach this location would have taken centuries, even with faster-than-light drive technology." Engineer Trylock was examining the ship's power systems and making his own disturbing discoveries. "Commander, I need to revise my earlier assessment of their propulsion technology. Yes, they're using chemical and nuclear thermal rockets, but they're not the primary drive system. There's something else here, something I don't understand." He led them to a section of the ship that housed the main engines. What they found there challenged everything they thought they knew about the vessel. Hidden beneath layers of additional equipment and modifications was a drive system, unlike anything in Council databases. It wasn't using gravitational manipulation like modern, faster-than-light drives, nor did it rely on the quantum tunnel effects used by most advanced civilizations. Instead, it seemed to be based on principles that the Council's science had dismissed as theoretically impossible. "This drive system appears to manipulate space-time directly," whispered Trylock, his breathing slits fluttering with nervous excitement. "But the mathematical requirements for such technology are beyond even our current understanding. How could a primitive civilization have developed something like this?" They found the ship's library databases and began downloading what information they could access. The language was completely unknown, but the Council's universal translation systems began working on pattern recognition and mathematical correlations. As the first translations came through, the boarding party felt their understanding of galactic history beginning to crumble. The ship's name translated roughly to "Enduring Hope," and it was identified as a deep space exploration vessel belonging to something called the Terran Colonial Fleet. According to the logs, it had been launched from a world called Earth as part of a massive expansion program designed to establish human colonies throughout the galaxy. "Humans," said Commander Zephyx, struggling to process this information. "I've never heard of any species called humans. And this ship is supposed to be from Earth? There's no planet by that name in any of our star charts." But Kalen was uncovering even more disturbing information from the ship's databases. "Commander, according to these records, the humans launched not just this ship, but hundreds of similar vessels. This was part of something called the Millennium Project, a coordinated effort to spread their civilization across the entire galaxy. The more they learned, the more impossible it seemed. The records spoke of massive industrial capabilities, enormous populations, and technological achievements that seemed far beyond what should have been possible for any civilization 1,000 years ago. "Look at these population figures," said Trylock, studying demographic data from the ship's files. "They're claiming their homeworld had over 12 billion inhabitants, with colonies on hundreds of other worlds. That's larger than most current Council civilizations." But the most shocking discovery came when Kalen managed to access the ship's historical archives. Hidden deep in the database were records of contact with other alien civilizations, including detailed descriptions of several species that the boarding party recognized immediately. "Commander," Kalen said, his voice barely above a whisper, "these records describe contact with the Althari Empire, the Zelthian Trade Federation, and the Korthax Military Republic. They have detailed information about all of these civilizations, including technology assessments and diplomatic correspondence. This was impossible. The Althari Empire had dominated that region of space 800 years ago, before mysteriously disappearing. The Zelthian Trade Federation had been a major galactic power for centuries, before suddenly withdrawing from interstellar commerce. The Korthax Military Republic had been one of the most feared civilizations in the galaxy before they inexplicably abandoned their military expansion and became isolationist. According to these records, continued Kalen, the humans were in active communication with all of these civilizations. In fact, it appears that the humans were considered equals or even superiors in several technological areas. The implications were staggering. If these records were accurate, then humans had been a major galactic civilization 1,000 years ago, with technology and capabilities that rivaled or exceeded anything the Council possessed today. But if that was true, where were they now? Why was there no trace of this vast human civilization in current galactic affairs? Commander Zephyx ordered his team to search for more recent records. Anything that might explain what had happened to the humans after this ship had been launched. What they found in the ship's final log entries was both fascinating and terrifying. The last entries described something called the Great Regression, a deliberate decision by human civilization to abandon their advanced technology and withdraw from galactic affairs. According to the logs, humans had discovered something during their expansion that convinced them that rapid technological advancement was dangerous, not just to themselves, but to all intelligent life in the galaxy. They chose to go backward, read Kalen from the translated logs. They deliberately destroyed their advanced shipyards, dismantled their faster-than-light communication networks, and abandoned most of their colonies. They wanted to reset their civilization to a more sustainable level of development. The final log entry, recorded by the ship's captain over 900 years ago, was particularly chilling. We have become too powerful too quickly. The universe is not ready for what we have learned how to do. Perhaps it never will be. We are returning to Earth to shut down the Millennium Project permanently. Let future generations develop more slowly, more wisely. May they never repeat our mistakes. The boarding party stood in stunned silence as they absorbed this information. They had discovered the derelict vessel of what might have been the most advanced civilization in galactic history, a species that had voluntarily given up technology that the Council could barely understand, let alone replicate. "Commander," said Trilok quietly, "if these records are accurate, then humans still exist somewhere in the galaxy. They didn't go extinct. They just went backward technologically." "But where?" asked Kalen. "And how far backward did they go? Are they still spacefaring? Are they even aware of their own history?" Before Commander Zephyx could answer, his communicator crackled with an urgent message from the Stellar Wisdom. Navigator Essex's voice was tight with excitement and concern. "Commander, you need to return to the ship immediately. We've been monitoring galactic communication networks while you've been aboard the derelict. We just intercepted a Council intelligence bulletin that changes everything." "What kind of bulletin?" asked Zephyx. "Sir, they've positively identified a species called humans operating in the Outer Rim territories. According to the report, they've recently achieved faster-than-light travel and are beginning to make contact with other civilizations. The Council is considering them for preliminary membership evaluation." The boarding party exchanged stunned glances. The humans were back. After 1,000 years of deliberate technological regression, they had rebuilt their civilization and were once again reaching for the stars. "There's more, Commander," continued Essex. "The initial assessment reports describe them as promising but primitive, with technology roughly equivalent to early spacefaring civilizations. The evaluation team recommends treating them as an emerging species requiring guidance and protection." Commander Zephyx looked around at the incredibly advanced technology surrounding them in the ancient human ship. The primitive species the Council was preparing to patronize and guide were the descendants of the most advanced civilization the galaxy had ever seen. They just didn't know it yet. The emergency council session aboard the Stellar Wisdom was unlike any Commander Zephyx had ever convened. The senior officers sat around the conference table in stunned silence, trying to process the implications of what they had discovered. The primitive derelict they had mocked just hours earlier had turned out to be evidence of the most advanced civilization in galactic history. "Let me understand this correctly," said Navigator Essex, her crystalline form flickering with nervous energy. "The humans that the Council is currently evaluating as a promising primitive species are the same humans who built starships with technology we can't even understand over 1,000 years ago." "That appears to be correct," confirmed Science Officer Kalen, his tentacles organizing the data files they had extracted from the ancient ship. "Moreover, according to these records, they voluntarily abandoned that technology and regressed to a pre-spaceflight civilization. What we're seeing now is their second attempt at interstellar expansion." Engineer Trilok was studying the technical specifications they had downloaded, and his findings were making him increasingly uncomfortable. "Commander, I've been analyzing their faster-than-light drive technology. It's not just advanced. It's based on principles that our scientists have declared theoretically impossible. If this data is accurate, they were manipulating the fundamental structure of space-time itself." "How is that possible?" asked Tactical Officer Nereth, his scaled hide rippling with agitation. "Our best physicists have proven that direct space-time manipulation requires energy levels equivalent to stellar output. No civilization could possibly generate that much power. Unless," said Kalen slowly, "they found a way to do it that we haven't discovered yet. Or perhaps they found a way that we deliberately chose not to pursue because we considered it too dangerous." This thought sent a chill through the assembled officers. The idea that any civilization might voluntarily abandon such advanced technology suggested that they had discovered something truly terrifying about its potential consequences. Commander Zephyx activated the ship's secure communication system and established a priority channel to Council Intelligence Headquarters. What he was about to report would change everything the galactic community thought they knew about technological development and species classification. "Intelligence Command, this is Survey Fleet Commander Zephyx aboard the Stellar Wisdom. I need to speak with Director Corvash immediately. Classification, ultra priority, need-to-know basis." The response came back within minutes, which was unprecedented for bureaucratic council communications. Director Corvash's insectoid features appeared on the screen, his compound eyes glittering with curiosity and concern. "Commander Zephyx, your request for ultra-priority communication has been approved. What have you discovered that requires such extreme classification?" Zephyx took a deep breath before beginning his report. "Director, we've discovered a derelict vessel of unknown origin drifting in the Kethvar system. Our initial assessment was that it belonged to an extinct primitive civilization. However, detailed investigation has revealed that this vessel was constructed by humans approximately 1,000 years ago, using technology that appears to be centuries ahead of our current capabilities." Director Corvash's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation among his species. "Did you say humans, Commander? The same species currently under evaluation for council membership?" "Affirmative, sir. But the implications are far more serious than species identification. According to the ship's historical records, humans were operating as a major galactic civilization 1,000 years ago, with colonies throughout the galaxy and technology that we cannot begin to replicate." The director's compound eyes focused intently on Zephyx. "That's impossible, Commander. Our historical records show no evidence of any such civilization. A galactic-spanning human empire would have left traces throughout Council space. With respect, sir, it appears they deliberately erased those traces. According to the ship's final logs, humans voluntarily abandoned their advanced technology in something they called the Great Regression. They dismantled their colonies destroyed their shipyards, and returned to their homeworld to start over at a more primitive technological level. The silence that followed this revelation lasted for several long minutes. Finally, Director Korvash spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "Commander, if what you're telling me is accurate, then we're dealing with a species that has already achieved technological supremacy once and chose to abandon it. The current humans making first contact with Council species are essentially the children of the most advanced civilization in galactic history." "Yes, sir. And according to their own records, they did so because they discovered that their rapid technological advancement posed a threat to all intelligent life in the galaxy. This information sent shockwaves through both the ship's crew and Council intelligence. If humans had voluntarily regressed from technological supremacy, what had they learned that made them fear their own capabilities? And more importantly, were they likely to discover the same things again as they rebuilt their civilization?" Engineer Trylock had been continuing his analysis of the human ship's technology while the command conference proceeded. His findings were becoming more disturbing by the hour. "Commander," he interrupted the communication with Intelligence Command, "I need to report something critical. I've been studying their power generation systems, and I believe I understand why they might have chosen to abandon this technology." "Proceed, Engineer." "Their primary power sources aren't fusion or antimatter, as we initially assumed. They appear to be directly converting matter to energy using controlled singularities. Essentially, they were using artificial black holes as power sources for their starships. The implications hit everyone simultaneously. Controlled singularity technology was not just advanced, it was potentially catastrophic if it malfunctioned. A single accident could destroy entire star systems." "That's not all," continued Trylock. "Their faster-than-light drives weren't just manipulating space-time, they were creating temporary artificial wormholes. According to their technical manuals, they could establish instantaneous travel corridors across thousands of light-years." Director Korvash's image on the communication screen flickered as he processed this information. "Commander, you're describing technology that could fundamentally alter the nature of galactic civilization. If humans possessed such capabilities, they would have been capable of appearing anywhere in the galaxy without warning." "Which explains why they might have chosen to abandon it," said Commander Zefix grimly. "That level of power would be tempting to use aggressively and potentially destabilizing to galactic peace." Science Officer Kalen had been quietly working through the historical records, trying to correlate the human timeline with known galactic events. His discoveries were providing even more disturbing context. "Commander, I've found correlations between the human presence 1,000 years ago and several unexplained galactic events. The mysterious disappearance of the Althari Empire coincides with the end of their recorded diplomatic contact with humans. The Zelthian withdrawal from trade corresponds to a human memo about concerning political developments in their territory." "Are you suggesting the humans were involved in these civilizations' decline?" asked Director Korvash. "Not directly, sir, but it appears that wherever humans established significant contact with other species, those species either advanced rapidly or retreated from galactic affairs entirely. The humans seem to have had a profound destabilizing effect on other civilizations, possibly just through the example of their technological capabilities." This revelation painted an even more complex picture of why humans might have chosen to regress. They hadn't just feared their own power. They had recognized that their very presence in the galaxy was forcing other species to advance too quickly or retreat entirely, disrupting the natural pace of technological and social development. Commander Zefix realized that the Council was now faced with an unprecedented decision. The humans currently seeking Council membership were not the primitive species they appeared to be, but the deliberately regressed descendants of a civilization that had once possessed godlike technological abilities. "Director," he said slowly, "we need to decide how to handle this information. Do we tell the humans about their own history? Do we reveal to the Council that we're evaluating the descendants of technological gods? And most importantly, what do we do if they start rediscovering their ancestors' capabilities? Before Director Korvash could respond, Communications Specialist Vorthon interrupted with an urgent message from the Council's diplomatic corps. Commander, priority message from the Human Contact Division. The human delegation has requested an accelerated evaluation process. They're claiming they have significant technological contributions to offer the galactic community, and they want to demonstrate advanced capabilities that their initial assessments didn't reveal. The boarding party exchanged alarmed glances. Were the humans already beginning to rediscover their lost technology? Had their 1,000-year regression been shorter than planned? What kind of advanced capabilities are they claiming? Asked Director Korvash. Vorthon consulted his communication logs. They mention revolutionary propulsion concepts, breakthrough energy generation methods, and innovative approaches to space-time mechanics. The exact details are classified pending the demonstration, but the terminology is remarkably similar to what we found in the ancient ship's databases. The silence that followed was deafening. It appeared that the humans were not just rebuilding their civilization, they were rapidly approaching the same technological milestones that had led them to voluntarily regress 1,000 years earlier. Commander Zefix, said Director Korvash finally, I'm ordering an immediate classification of ultra-secret on all information related to your discovery. No one outside of the current briefing is to know about the ancient human ship or its contents. We need time to evaluate the implications before making any decisions about how to proceed. What about the humans currently seeking council membership, sir? Continue the evaluation process as normal, but monitor them closely for any signs of rapid technological advancement. If they begin demonstrating capabilities similar to what you found on that derelict, we'll need to make some very difficult decisions about the future of galactic civilization. As the communication ended, Commander Zefix looked around at his senior staff. They had set out to investigate what they thought was a primitive derelict vessel, only to discover evidence that could fundamentally change their understanding of galactic history and human potential. Commander? Asked Engineer Trilok quietly. What do you think will happen when the humans remember who they used to be? It was a question that would keep the entire crew awake for many nights to come. The galaxy had spent 1,000 years developing under the assumption that rapid technological advancement was both natural and desirable. But the humans had learned something that convinced them otherwise, something so significant that they had voluntarily abandoned technological supremacy. Now those same humans were returning to the galactic stage, and there was no way to know whether they would make the same choice again, or whether this time they would decide that the galaxy was ready for the return of the most advanced civilization in its history. The ancient ship, Enduring Hope, continued its lonely drift through space, a silent monument to the species that had once ruled the galaxy and chosen to walk away. But its discovery had set in motion events that would determine whether that walking away had been permanent or merely a temporary pause in humanity's technological destiny. The boarding party completed their documentation of the vessel and returned to the Stellar Wisdom, carrying with them the secret that would either ensure galactic peace or herald the return of the most powerful civilization the universe had ever seen. Only time would tell which path the humans would choose when they remembered who they really were: the boarding shuttle, scientific inquiry. Detached from the enlightened purpose, with barely a whisper, its advanced propulsion systems guiding it through the debris field toward the mysterious vessel. Commander Vexhai led the boarding party personally, accompanied by Science Officer Keltmore, Engineer Zathul, and a small security detail trained in xenoarchaeological procedures. As they approached the vessel's hull, the true scale of the ship became apparent. What had seemed large on the view screen was massive up close, a floating mountain of metal and purpose. The hull plates were indeed welded together, but as they drew closer, Keltmore noticed something that made his scientific instincts perk up. Commander, these welds, they're not crude at all. Look at the molecular bonding patterns. This is precision work, designed to maintain structural integrity under extreme stress. Whoever built this understood metallurgy far better than our initial assessment suggested. Engineer Zathel, whose cybernetic implants allowed him to interface directly with the shuttle's scanning equipment, added his own observations. The armor thickness varies across the hull in a calculated pattern. It's thickest where sensors indicate the most battle damage occurred. This ship was designed by beings who understood they would be shot at, and they built accordingly. The boarding party located an airlock, a massive reinforced affair that spoke to the builder's expectation of hostile boarding attempts. Zathel's tools made short work of the ancient mechanisms, and the airlock cycled open with a grinding sound that echoed through the shuttle's hull. "Atmosphere is long gone," reported Keltmore, checking his instruments. "Internal temperature is near absolute zero. Whatever happened here, the life support systems failed completely at some point." The boarding party activated their environmental suits and stepped into the vessel. The corridor they entered was wide enough for 3 Zephyrians to walk abreast, with a ceiling high enough to accommodate even the tallest known species. But it wasn't designed for comfort. Every surface was functional, covered in pipes, cables, and access panels. Emergency lighting strips ran along the floor and ceiling, currently dark but clearly built to function even if the main power systems failed. "Practical," murmured Vexhai, running his scanner along the walls. "Everything serves a purpose. No decoration, no wasted space, just function." As they moved deeper into the ship, the boarding party began to appreciate the scope of what they were exploring. This wasn't just a warship, it was a mobile fortress. Blast doors every 50 meters, automated defensive positions, redundant systems running through protected conduits. The builders had expected this vessel to be boarded by hostile forces and had prepared accordingly. "Commander," called Engineer Zathel from ahead, "you need to see this." They found him standing before what was clearly the ship's armory. Even in the darkness, their suit lights revealed rack upon rack of weapons, not elegant energy weapons or sophisticated projectile systems, but brutal, effective tools designed for one purpose: killing. The weapons were built to the same philosophy as the ship itself: robust, reliable, and devastating. Keltmore picked up one of the smaller weapons, his scientific curiosity overriding his caution. "This is interesting. It's a chemical projectile weapon, but the engineering is sophisticated. Multiple firing modes, extensive cooling systems, modular design for field maintenance. These beings expected to fight for extended periods without resupply." "Look at the ammunition," added Zathel, examining containers of metal slugs. "Various types. Armor-piercing, explosive, some kind of incendiary compound. And the quantities. Commander, there's enough ammunition here to supply a small army for months of continuous combat." As they continued their exploration, the boarding party began to piece together a picture of the vessel's original crew. The living quarters were Spartan, but comfortable, designed for beings roughly the size of Zephyrians, but with different proportions. The medical bay contained equipment they didn't recognize, but its purpose was clear: treating severe combat injuries under battlefield conditions. "Sir," reported Security Officer Hendricks, who had been examining the ship's bridge, "you should see the command center." The bridge was a masterpiece of military engineering. Multiple command stations, each with manual backups and independent power systems. Tactical displays that could show battlefield information from dozens of different perspectives. Communications equipment designed to punch through jamming and interference that would cripple more sophisticated systems. But it was the captain's chair that truly caught their attention. Built for function rather than comfort, surrounded by controls and displays, it was positioned to give the ship's commander a perfect view of everything happening both inside and outside the vessel. Scratches on the armrests suggested years of use, and stains on the metal spoke to the stress of command during desperate battles. "Keltmore," said Vexhai quietly, "run a detailed analysis of the command systems. I want to know everything about whoever built this ship." As the science officer began his work, the rest of the boarding party continued their exploration. What they found continued to contradict their initial assumptions. The ship's computers, while primitive by galactic standards, were marvels of reliability and redundancy. The power systems could run on almost any available fuel source. The life support systems were built to function in damaged compartments under hostile conditions for extended periods. "Commander," reported Keltmore after several hours of analysis, "I've managed to access some of the ship's data systems. The information is fragmentary, but I'm beginning to understand more about this vessel's origin." Vexhai and the others gathered around the science officer as he displayed his findings on a portable holographic projector. The ship's designation appears to be Indomitable Will, and according to internal records, it was constructed in what they call Stardate 2387 by something called the United Earth Defense Force. "Earth?" questioned Zathel. "I've never heard of that world." "Neither have I," admitted Keltmore. "But the records indicate it's the homeworld of a species that calls itself humanity, or humans." The ship was apparently part of a fleet engaged in what they termed first contact defense operations. A chill ran through the boarding party as they processed this information. First contact defense operations. That implied they had been fighting someone when they first encountered them. "What kind of defensive operations?" asked Vexhai, though he was beginning to suspect he didn't want to know the answer. Keltmore manipulated the holographic display, bringing up additional data. "The records are fragmented, but they reference multiple engagements against what they call hostile alien forces. Apparently, this species' first contact with extraterrestrial life was not peaceful." "That's impossible," protested Engineer Zathel. "The Third Galactic Renaissance was a time of peace. All species achieved interstellar flight during periods of prosperity and exploration. There were no hostile first contacts." "According to these records," continued Keltmore, his voice growing tense, "the humans encountered a species they call the Devourers, approximately 50 years after achieving faster-than-light travel. The Devourers apparently viewed humanity as nothing more than a food source and launched immediate attacks against human colonies. The implications hit the boarding party like a physical blow. If these records were accurate, it meant that during the galaxy's most peaceful era, an unknown species had been fighting for its survival against an enemy so hostile that no record of them existed in galactic databases. "Show us more," ordered Vexhai, his scientific curiosity warring with a growing sense of dread. The holographic display shifted to show tactical information, battle reports, casualty figures, strategic assessments. The humans had been massively outgunned and outclassed technologically, but they had fought anyway. Ship after ship had been lost, colonies had been evacuated or destroyed, and yet they had continued building vessels like the Indomitable Will and sending them into battle. "Commander," said Keltmore, his voice barely above a whisper, "according to these records, humanity was fighting a defensive war against a technologically superior enemy for over 200 years. They lost hundreds of ships, millions of lives, entire star systems, but they never surrendered." "What happened to them?" asked Security Officer Hendix. "The humans, I mean." "And these Devourers?" Keltmore worked to access more recent records, but much of the data was corrupted or missing. The last clear entries are from approximately 1,000 years ago. There are references to a final push and something called Operation Broken Chain, but the details are incomplete. Engineer Zathel had been quietly scanning the ship's systems while the others examined the historical records. Now he looked up with an expression of scientific bewilderment. "Commander, I think I understand why this ship seemed so crude to us initially. It's not because the builders lacked sophistication, it's because they had different priorities. Explain, ordered Vex-High. Every system on this ship is designed for one thing: continued operation under catastrophic damage. The redundant power systems, the manual backups, the thick armor, the welded hull plates, it's all designed to keep fighting even when most of the ship is destroyed. Our modern vessels are marvels of efficiency and elegant design, but they're fragile compared to this. You're saying this ship was built by beings who expected to be outgunned and outnumbered, said Vex-High, understanding dawning in his voice. Exactly. They couldn't match their enemies in technology, so they built ships that could absorb tremendous punishment and keep fighting. Look at these battle damage reports. The indomitable will survived engagements that should have destroyed it a dozen times over. As the boarding party continued their investigation, they began to understand that they weren't just looking at an ancient warship. They were looking at evidence of a species that had faced extinction and refused to accept it. Every design choice, every system, every weapon had been built by beings who knew they might lose but had decided to make their enemies pay dearly for every victory. "Commander," said Kelt Moore, who had been working to piece together more of the ship's records, "I found something else. Technical specifications for other human vessels. Sir, the indomitable Will wasn't their most powerful ship. It was apparently a medium cruiser. They built things much larger." The holographic display showed wireframe schematics of massive vessels, some several kilometers long, armed with weapons that dwarfed anything in the current galactic arsenal. Ships designed not for exploration or trade, but for one purpose: war. "How many ships did they build?" asked Vex-High, though he was beginning to fear the answer. "Thousands," replied Kelt Moore. "Maybe tens of thousands. This debris field, I don't think it's the site of a single battle. I think it's where their entire fleet came to die." The boarding party stood in silence, contemplating the implications of their discovery. A species that had fought against impossible odds for centuries, that had built ships designed to absorb punishment that would destroy any modern vessel, that had apparently made some kind of final stand in this remote corner of space. "Sir," said Engineer Zathel quietly, "if humanity built ships like this 1,000 years ago, and if they've had all this time to develop their technology further—" He didn't need to finish the thought. Every member of the boarding party was beginning to understand that their mocking dismissal of the crude vessel might have been premature. If the humans had survived their ancient war, if they had continued to develop their military technology with the same ruthless efficiency they had demonstrated in the indomitable Will, then the galaxy might be about to encounter something unprecedented. They had stumbled upon evidence of a species that had learned to fight and survive against impossible odds. And somewhere in the depths of space, that species might still be out there, building ships and preparing for whatever came next. The revelation came not through the ship's ancient computers, but through Engineer Zathel's methodical analysis of the indomitable Will's construction techniques. As the boarding party prepared to return to their ship, he made one final scan of the vessel's hull composition and discovered something that changed everything. "Commander," he said, his voice tight with barely controlled excitement, "you need to see this immediately." Vex-High and the others gathered around the engineer as he displayed his findings on the portable holographic projector. "I've been analyzing the metallurgical signatures in the hull plating, trying to determine the exact age and composition of the vessel. But I found something unexpected." The hologram showed a detailed molecular analysis of the ship's hull. "The base metals are indeed approximately 1,000 years old, as we initially determined. But there are trace elements, isotopic signatures, that shouldn't exist in naturally occurring materials. These elements were artificially created in controlled fusion reactions." "What does that mean?" asked Security Officer Hendricks. "It means," said Zathel slowly, that the humans didn't just mine these materials from their homeworld. They manufactured them using advanced nuclear engineering techniques that we've only seen in the most sophisticated galactic civilizations. Science Officer Keltmore's compound eyes widened as the implications hit him. You're saying they had advanced nuclear technology 1,000 years ago? More than that, replied Zathel. I'm saying they had nuclear technology that was more advanced than what most current galactic species possess. These isotopic signatures suggest they were manipulating matter at the subatomic level with precision that shouldn't have been possible for a species still building ships out of metal plates. Commander Vex High felt a cold weight settling in his stomach. Continue your analysis. I want to know everything about the technology that built this ship. As Zathel worked, Keltmore made his own disturbing discovery. Commander, I've been trying to decode more of the ship's historical records, and I've found references to something called the Sol System Defense Grid. The fragmentary records suggest it was a network of automated defense stations around the human homeworld. Automated defenses aren't unusual, observed Vex High. Most civilizations build orbital defense platforms. Sir, according to these records, the Sol System Defense Grid consisted of over 10,000 individual stations, each one armed with weapons capable of destroying capital ships. And that was just the fixed defenses. That doesn't include the mobile fleet elements. The boarding party exchanged glances. 10,000 defense stations represented a military infrastructure that dwarfed anything currently known in the galaxy. The largest defense grids maintained by the Galactic Council protected systems with fewer than 100 stations. There's more, continued Keltmore. The records reference something called the Terraforming Initiative. Apparently, the humans weren't content to simply defend their existing worlds. They were actively creating new ones, transforming entire planets to suit their needs. Terraforming is a known technology, said Vex High, though his voice betrayed his growing unease. Not like this, sir. According to these records, they were transforming worlds in decades rather than centuries, some kind of accelerated atmospheric processing that we don't understand. They were turning dead rocks into garden worlds faster than most species can build cities. Engineer Zathel looked up from his analysis, his cybernetic implants flickering with data streams. Commander, I've found something else. The indomitable will contains technology that we missed in our initial scans. Hidden in the hull structure are what appear to be microscopic manufacturing systems, molecular assemblers designed to repair damage and maintain the ship's systems indefinitely. Self-repairing ships? Questioned Hendix. Self-improving ships, corrected Zathel. These assemblers don't just repair damage, they upgrade systems based on combat experience. This vessel was designed to become more effective the longer it fought. Every battle would have made it stronger. The full implications of their discovery were beginning to crystallize, and none of the boarding party liked what they were seeing. A species that had possessed advanced nuclear engineering, automated manufacturing, rapid terraforming, and self-improving military technology, all 1,000 years ago, during what the galaxy remembered as a peaceful era. Sir, said Keltmore quietly, I need to show you something else. I've been analyzing the star charts in the ship's navigation systems. The humans mapped significantly more territory than their official first contact date would suggest. The holographic display shifted to show a three-dimensional star chart covering hundreds of light years. Human exploration routes snaked through space, touching dozens of star systems, many of which were currently inhabited by species that had supposedly achieved interstellar flight centuries after humanity. According to these charts, continued Keltmore, the humans had explored most of this sector of the galaxy before they encountered the Devourers. They knew about our worlds, our species, our civilizations, but they never made contact. Why not? Asked Vex High, though he was beginning to suspect the answer. Because they were watching, replied Keltmore. The records reference something called the Silent Protocol. The humans had discovered that the galaxy was full of intelligent life, but they chose to remain hidden while they studied us. Engineer Zathel's next discovery drove home the truly staggering implications of humanity's technological capabilities. Commander, I've found manufacturing specifications in the ship's computers. The humans weren't just building these vessels one at a time. They had fully automated shipyards capable of constructing fleets without any direct supervision. Automated shipyards? Repeated Vex-High. Sir, according to these specifications, a single human automated shipyard could construct a vessel like the Indomitable Will in less than 6 months, working continuously. And they built dozens of these yards throughout their space. The boarding party stood in stunned silence as they contemplated what this meant. A civilization capable of rapidly constructing fleets of self-improving warships, defended by massive automated grids, expanding through rapid terraforming, all while remaining hidden from the rest of the galaxy. Commander, said Security Officer Hendix, voicing what they were all beginning to think, if the humans had this level of technology 1,000 years ago, and if they survived their war with the Devourers, what do they have now? Before Vex-High could respond, Science Officer Keltmore made one final terrifying discovery. Sir, I've found the conclusion of the ship's records, the final entry, logged just before the Indomitable Will was abandoned. The holographic display showed a single line of text, translated from the human language. Operation Broken Chain successful. Devourer homeworld eliminated. Fleet proceeding to rendezvous coordinates for Phase 2 operations. Long live humanity. Phase 2 operations? Whispered Engineer Zathel. Keltmore manipulated the display, showing the last star chart logged by the ship's navigation systems. The rendezvous coordinates are in the galactic rim territories, far beyond current explored space. If the humans successfully eliminated the Devourers and then withdrew to the rim, they've had 1,000 years to build, finished Vex-High. 1,000 years to develop their technology in secret, with all the experience and knowledge gained from their war. The implications were staggering. While the known galaxy had enjoyed a millennium of peace and prosperity focused on art, philosophy, and cultural advancement, humanity had potentially been preparing for something else entirely. They had started with technology that was already centuries ahead of its time, had been tempered by generations of total war, and had been given 1,000 years of uninterrupted development time in secret. Sir, said Keltmore, his voice barely above a whisper, there's one more thing. The ship's long-range sensors recorded something just before it was abandoned. Multiple massive signatures leaving the battlefield heading toward the galactic rim. According to these readings, the objects were several kilometers long and moving at velocities that shouldn't have been possible with known propulsion technology. The human fleet, said Vex-High. They didn't die here. They won their war and left. As the boarding party prepared to leave the Indomitable Will, they each understood that their discovery would fundamentally alter galactic civilization. They had found evidence of a species that had been underestimated, had survived impossible odds, and had disappeared into the unknown, with technology that was already centuries ahead of anything else in the galaxy. The trip back to the enlightened purpose was made in contemplative silence. Each member of the boarding party was lost in thought, trying to process what they had learned. The crude, primitive vessel they had initially mocked represented something far more significant than they had imagined. It was evidence of humanity's first steps into the galaxy, steps taken during a time when they were fighting for survival against an enemy that had tried to exterminate them. But more than that, it was proof that humanity was still out there, somewhere in the vast reaches of space, building and preparing and growing stronger with each passing year. When they finally returned to their ship, Commander Vex-High immediately called a meeting of his senior staff. As the crew of the Enlightened Purpose listened to their report, the same progression of emotions that had affected the boarding party, curiosity, amusement, concern, and finally fear, swept through the entire ship. Recommendations? Asked Vex-High when the report was complete. We need to contact the Galactic Council immediately, said Science Officer Keltmore. This discovery has implications for every species in known space. Agreed, replied Vex-High. But what do we tell them? That we've discovered evidence of a species that's been secretly building military technology for 1,000 years? That somewhere in the galaxy, there's a civilization that learned to fight against impossible odds and has been preparing for something we can't even imagine? We tell them the truth, said Communications Officer Neld. That the galaxy may be about to change, whether we're ready for it or not. As the Enlightened Purpose prepared to transmit its report to the Galactic Council, the crew couldn't help but wonder what humanity had become during their millennium of secret development. They had started as a species fighting for survival with crude but effective technology. What were they now, after 1,000 years of technological advancement driven by the hard-learned lessons of total war? The answer to that question was something the galaxy would discover soon enough. For in the deepest reaches of space, beyond the knowledge of the Galactic Council and its member species, humanity had indeed been building. They had taken the brutal lessons learned from their war with the Devourers and had used them to create something unprecedented. A civilization designed not just to survive, but to ensure that no other species would ever again face the extinction that they had barely escaped. The Indomitable Will and its sister ships had been humanity's first steps into the galaxy, but they were not humanity's last, and when they finally chose to reveal themselves to the galaxy at large, the crude, battle-scarred vessel that the crew of the Enlightened Purpose had discovered would be remembered not as a relic of primitive technology, but as a monument to the determination that had carried humanity from the edge of extinction to something far greater. The galaxy was about to learn what humanity had become, and nothing would ever be the same. 3 days had passed since the encounter with the Nexus dreadnought, and Captain Zethka found himself unable to concentrate on routine duties. The image of the human vessel's impossible transformation replayed endlessly in his mind. He had filed his report with Federation Command, but their response had been frustratingly bureaucratic, a simple acknowledgement and instructions to continue his mission. The Prosperity's Edge was now docked at Waystation Sigma-7, a massive space station that served as a trading hub for dozens of Federation species. Zethka had hoped that some distance from the mysterious encounter might help clear his thoughts, but instead, it had only intensified his curiosity. Dr. Yilan entered his quarters without the usual chime announcement, a privilege earned through decades of friendship and shared service. Her expression was troubled, and her tentacles moved in the agitated patterns that indicated deep concern. Zethka, I've been analyzing the sensor data from our encounter. The results are disturbing. Disturbing how? He gestured for her to take a seat in the specially designed chair that accommodated her species' unique physiology. The energy patterns we recorded don't match any known technology in the Federation database. More troubling, they don't match any theoretical models either. According to everything we know about physics, what that ship did should be impossible. Zethka's 4 eyes focused intently on his old friend. Dr. Yilan was not given to exaggeration or wild theories. If she was troubled, there was good reason. Explain. The weapons that ship used weren't just advanced. They appeared to manipulate space-time itself. The energy required for such manipulation would need to come from sources we can't even imagine. A black hole, perhaps. Or matter-antimatter annihilation on a scale that should have been detectable from several star systems away. But our sensors detected no such energy signatures during the transformation. Exactly. Whatever technology that ship possesses, it operates on principles completely outside our understanding of science. Dr. Yilan's tentacles curled in frustration. I've been a physicist for over 60 years, Zethka. I've studied the technologies of 47 different species. This is beyond anything I've ever encountered. Before Zethka could respond, his communication console chimed with an urgent message. Lieutenant Zaris's voice filled the room. "Captain, we have an incoming Priority Alpha transmission from Federation Intelligence Division. They're requesting an immediate secure conference." Zethka and Dr. B. Yilan exchanged glances. Priority Alpha communications were reserved for matters of galactic security. "Patch it through to my quarters, Lieutenant." The holographic projection system activated, revealing the image of Director Kelsmore, head of Federation Intelligence. The elderly Zentorian's 3 heads turned in sequence as he addressed them, a sign of extreme importance among his species. "Captain Zethka, Dr. Yilan, thank you for accepting this communication. I'm contacting you because your recent encounter with a human vessel has raised significant concerns within Intelligence Division." "Director, I submitted a complete report on the incident. Is there additional information you require?" "Captain, what I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest levels. The human vessel you encountered has been tracked by our deep space monitoring stations for the past 6 months. What troubles us is not just its capabilities, but its origins." Dr. Yilan leaned forward. "Origins? The humans told us it was an exploration vessel from Earth. That's where the situation becomes complicated. We've checked with Earth's colonial administration. They have no record of any ship called the Defiant Dawn. In fact, they have no record of any human vessel with those specific design characteristics." The implications hit Zethka immediately. "Are you suggesting it's not a human ship?" "Oh, it's definitely human. Our xenobiology experts confirmed the biosignatures of the crew. But here's what's truly puzzling. Spectroscopic analysis of the hull materials shows isotope decay patterns that suggest extreme age." "How extreme?" Dr. Yilan's scientific curiosity was clearly overcoming her caution. Director Kelsmore's 3 heads turned simultaneously, indicating the gravity of what he was about to reveal. "Preliminary estimates suggest that ship is at least 800 years old, possibly older." The silence that followed was profound. Zethka felt as though the space station had suddenly stopped rotating. 800 years ago, humans hadn't even achieved interstellar travel. According to all historical records, they were still confined to their home solar system. "That's impossible," Dr. Yilan whispered. 800 years ago, humans were barely capable of chemical rocket propulsion. They hadn't even developed fusion power. Nevertheless, the isotope analysis doesn't lie. We've run the tests multiple times using different methodologies. The results are consistent. Director Kelsmore paused, allowing the weight of this revelation to sink in. "Captain, we need you to investigate this matter further." "What kind of investigation?" "The Defiant Dawn was last detected entering the Kepler 442 system, the same system where you encountered it. We believe it's still in that area, possibly hiding among the asteroids. We need you to return and gather more intelligence about this vessel and its crew." Zethka felt a chill run through his body. "Director, if this ship is as dangerous as we witnessed, approaching it again could be extremely hazardous." "We understand the risks, Captain. But this situation has implications that extend far beyond a single mysterious ship. If humans possessed advanced technology centuries before they achieved space travel, it changes everything we know about their species and their role in galactic affairs." After the communication ended, Zethka and Dr. Yilan sat in contemplative silence. The implications of Director Kelsmore's revelation were staggering. If the Defiant Dawn was truly 800 years old, it meant humans had possessed incredibly advanced technology long before they made contact with the Federation. "Zethka," Dr. Yilan said quietly, "what if we've been wrong about humanity from the beginning?" "Wrong how?" "What if they're not the primitive, recently spacefaring species we thought they were? What if they've been capable of interstellar travel for centuries, and they've been hiding it? The thought was unsettling. The Federation's relationship with humanity was based on the assumption that they were newcomers to galactic civilization, requiring guidance and protection. If that assumption was false, what else might they be wrong about? 2 days later, the Prosperity's Edge was once again traveling through hyperspace toward the Kepler 442 system. The crew had been briefed on their mission, though Zethka had kept the most sensitive details classified. As far as they knew, they were conducting a routine follow-up investigation. When they emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the system, their sensors immediately detected the Defiant Dawn exactly where Director Kelsmore had predicted. The human vessel was slowly moving through the asteroid field, apparently conducting the same survey operations as before. "Captain," Lieutenant Zaris reported, "the human ship is maintaining position near asteroid designation KP-442 Alpha 7. Energy output appears minimal, consistent with standard survey operations. Any response to our arrival?" "Negative, sir. They don't appear to have detected us yet." Dr. Yilan looked up from her science station. "Captain, I'm conducting passive scans of their vessel. The isotope analysis is confirming the Intelligence Division's findings. That ship is definitely ancient." Zethka studied the human vessel through the view screen. In its current configuration, it looked exactly as it had during their first encounter, rust-streaked, patched, and apparently held together through determination rather than advanced engineering. But now he knew better. Somewhere beneath that deliberately crude exterior lay technology that could manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe. "Take us closer, Lieutenant Zaris, but maintain a respectful distance. I don't want to appear threatening." As they approached, Zethka noticed something that had escaped his attention during their first encounter. The seemingly random pattern of rust streaks and metal patches across the hull wasn't random at all. When viewed from the correct angle, they formed symbols, complex geometric patterns that seemed to shift and change as the perspective altered. "Dr. Yilan, are you seeing this?" "The hull markings?" "Yes, I've been analyzing them. Captain, these aren't maintenance patches or battle damage. They're a form of writing." "Writing? In what language?" "That's what's so strange. The symbols appear to be a form of ancient human script, but predating any known human writing system by thousands of years. It's as if someone created these markings using a language that wouldn't exist for millennia." Before Zethka could respond, their communication system activated. Commander Chen's familiar voice filled the bridge. "Federation vessel, Prosperity's Edge. This is Commander Chen. We detect your approach. Is there something we can help you with?" "Commander, this is Captain Zethka. We're conducting follow-up research on the gravitational anomalies we encountered during our previous meeting. Would it be possible to coordinate our sensor sweeps to improve data accuracy?" The pause was longer this time, and when Commander Chen's voice returned, it carried the same uncertain quality they had heard before. "Captain, I'm afraid that won't be possible. Our current survey operations require specialized sensor configurations that might interfere with your equipment." Dr. Yilan was frantically working at her science station, her tentacles dancing across the controls. She looked up and caught Zethka's attention, then made a subtle gesture indicating she had discovered something important. "Commander, perhaps we could meet halfway? Our science officer has some questions about the unusual energy readings we detected. A brief scientific exchange could benefit both our missions." "I'm sorry, Captain, but I'm not authorized to discuss our technical specifications or scientific data. Perhaps you could submit your questions through proper Federation channels." Dr. Yilan activated a small display screen visible only to Zethka. The message that appeared made his heart skip a beat. "Captain, I've detected massive energy storage systems throughout that ship. The power levels are off the scale. This isn't just advanced technology. It's technology that operates on principles we don't understand." More importantly, the energy signature patterns match theoretical models for space-time manipulation devices that our best physicists say won't be possible for another 1,000 years. Zeth-Ka felt the pieces of a vast puzzle beginning to fall into place. A ship that was centuries older than it should be, with technology centuries more advanced than it should possess, operated by humans who insisted it was just a routine exploration vessel. Commander Chen, forgive me if this sounds presumptuous, but our sensors indicate your vessel possesses some rather remarkable capabilities. The defensive systems you demonstrated against the Nexus ship were impressive. This time, the silence stretched long enough that Zeth-Ka began to wonder if the communication link had failed. When Commander Chen's voice finally returned, it carried a new tone, wary, careful, as if she were choosing each word with extreme precision. Captain, I think there may be some confusion. The Defiant Dawn is equipped with standard Federation defensive systems, nothing more. Standard systems that can erase matter from existence. The communication channel went silent. For several minutes, the only sound on the bridge was the quiet hum of ship systems. Then, unexpectedly, a different voice spoke through the communication system. This voice was older, more authoritative, and carried an accent that Zeth-Ka couldn't place. Captain Zeth-Ka, this is Dr. James Harrison, Senior Mission Specialist aboard the Defiant Dawn. I understand you have some questions about our vessel. Dr. Harrison, thank you for speaking with us. We're simply trying to understand what we witnessed during the Nexus encounter. What you witnessed, Captain, was a demonstration of defensive capabilities that we prefer to keep private. I hope you can understand the need for discretion in these matters. Dr. Yilan looked up from her instruments and mouthed words that chilled Zeth-Ka to the bone. The isotope analysis just completed. That ship is over 1,000 years old. 1,000 years, long before humans had achieved spaceflight, long before they had even developed industrial technology. According to Federation historical records, 1,000 years ago, humans were still using primitive steam engines and had only recently discovered electricity. Dr. Harrison, Zeth-Ka said carefully, I find myself curious about the history of your vessel. It appears to have significant heritage. All ships have history, Captain. The important thing is the mission they're currently performing. Of course. But sometimes understanding the past helps us prepare for the future. Another long pause. When Dr. Harrison's voice returned, it carried a weight that suggested the man was carrying secrets far heavier than anything Zeth-Ka had ever imagined. Captain Zeth-Ka, there are some stories that aren't ready to be told, some truths that the galaxy isn't prepared to hear. I hope you can respect that. Dr. Harrison, with respect. The Federation has protocols for sharing information that affects galactic security. If your vessel possesses technology that could impact interstellar relations, there are proper channels. Captain, Dr. Harrison interrupted. What would you say if I told you that humanity's relationship with the galaxy is far more complex than anyone realizes? What if I told you that the assumptions everyone has made about human history are not just wrong, but impossibly wrong? The bridge of the Prosperity's edge fell into complete silence. Dr. Yilan's tentacles had stopped moving entirely, and Lieutenant Zaris was staring at the communication console as if it might explode. I would say, Zeth-Ka replied slowly, that I would very much like to understand what you mean by that. Captain, has it ever occurred to you to wonder why humanity adapted so quickly to galactic civilization? Why human technology, despite appearing primitive, seems to be uniquely effective? Why human ships perform better than they should? Why human tactics work against enemies that should outclass them completely? Dr. Harrison, are you suggesting... I'm not suggesting anything, Captain. I'm simply asking you to consider the possibility that everything the Federation knows about humanity might be based on incomplete information. Before Zeth-Ka could respond, the communication channel closed. Through the view screen, He watched as the Defiant Dawn began to move deeper into the asteroid field, its movements once again displaying that impossible grace that defied physics. Dr. Yilan looked up from her instruments, her expression grim. "Captain, I've completed a full spectrum analysis of that vessel. The results are unprecedented." "Tell me." "The hull materials show isotope decay patterns consistent with extreme age, over 1,000 years as I mentioned. But there's something else. Embedded in the metal structure are trace elements that shouldn't exist, isotopes that, according to our understanding of stellar nucleosynthesis, couldn't have formed naturally in this galaxy." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that ship wasn't just built 1,000 years ago, Zethka. It was built somewhere else, somewhere very far away." As the implications of Dr. Yilan's words sank in, Zethka realized that their investigation had uncovered something far larger than a mysterious ship with advanced technology. They had discovered evidence that humanity's presence in the galaxy might not be the recent development everyone believed it to be. And somewhere in the depths of space, aboard a ship that shouldn't exist, humans were keeping secrets that could change the fate of every species in the Federation. The emergency meeting convened in the secure conference room of Waystation Sigma-7 brought together the highest levels of Federation leadership. Captain Zethka found himself seated across from Director Kels Moore, 3 additional Intelligence Division representatives, and Dr. Elena Vasquez, the Federation's leading expert on human psychology and culture. Dr. Yilan's comprehensive analysis of the Defiant Dawn lay spread across the holographic display table, showing isotope decay charts, energy signature patterns, and hull composition breakdowns that painted an impossible picture. The evidence was undeniable, but its implications were so staggering that even the most experienced diplomats struggled to comprehend them. "Let me ensure I understand this correctly," said Ambassador Thel Chris, the Federation's senior diplomatic advisor. Her crystalline features reflected the data displays as she spoke. "You're telling us that a human vessel, currently operating in Federation space, is over 1,000 years old and contains technology that exceeds our most advanced theoretical models." "That's correct, Ambassador," Dr. Yilan replied. "But there's more. The energy signatures we've detected suggest this ship is capable of faster-than-light travel methods that bypass hyperspace entirely. The implications for galactic logistics and military strategy are enormous." Director Kelsmore's 3 heads turned in agitation. What troubles Intelligence Division most is the deception involved. If humans possess this level of technology, why are they pretending to be a newly spacefaring species? Dr. Elena Vasquez, who had remained silent throughout most of the briefing, finally spoke. "Director, in my 30 years of studying human psychology, I've learned that their species has an unusual relationship with truth and deception. They're capable of maintaining complex fabrications for generations if they believe it serves a greater purpose." "What greater purpose could justify hiding technology that could revolutionize galactic civilization?" Ambassador Thel Chris asked. Before anyone could answer, Lieutenant Zaris's voice filled the conference room through the communication system. "Captain Zethka, we have an urgent situation. The Defiant Dawn has reappeared at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, and it's broadcasting on all Federation frequencies." "Patch it through to the conference room," Zethka ordered. Dr. James Harrison's voice filled the secure chamber, carrying the same weight of hidden knowledge they had heard before. "Federation leadership, this is Dr. Harrison aboard the exploration vessel Defiant Dawn. I understand you've been conducting investigations into our vessel and its capabilities." Director Kelsmore leaned forward. "Dr. Harrison, this is Director Kelsmore of Federation Intelligence. We have many questions about your ship and its origins." "I'm sure you do, Director. And I've decided it's time to provide answers. However, the truth is far more complex than you might imagine, and it will require a fundamental reassessment of humanity's role in galactic affairs." Ambassador Thel Chris activated her communication interface. "Dr. Harrison, this is Ambassador Thel Chris. Are you suggesting that the Federation's understanding of human history is inaccurate? Not inaccurate, Ambassador. Deliberately incomplete. The truth is that the Defiant Dawn is indeed over 1,000 years old. We built it in Earth's year 2157, long before humanity was supposed to have achieved interstellar capability. The silence that followed was profound. Every member of the conference room stared at the communication console, trying to process the implications of what they had just heard. Dr. Harrison, Director Kelsmore said slowly, according to our historical records, humans didn't achieve interstellar travel until 3097. That's nearly 900 years after you claim this ship was built. Your records are correct about when humanity officially achieved interstellar travel, Director. But they're missing a crucial piece of the story. The Defiant Dawn wasn't built by the same human civilization that you know today. Dr. Elena Vasquez leaned forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming diplomatic protocol. What do you mean by the same civilization? Dr. Vasquez, what I'm about to tell you is the most closely guarded secret in human history. 1,000 years ago, humanity did achieve interstellar travel. We built ships like the Defiant Dawn and began exploring the galaxy. We made contact with dozens of species, established colonies on hundreds of worlds, and developed technology that you're only now beginning to understand. The implications hit Zeth Ka like a physical blow. Are you saying humans had a galactic civilization 1,000 years ago? More than that, Captain. We had the most advanced galactic civilization that had ever existed. Human technology surpassed anything the galaxy had seen before or since. We could manipulate space and time, create matter from energy, and travel between galaxies as easily as you travel between star systems. Ambassador Thel Chris's crystalline features had lost their usual glow. If that's true, what happened to this advanced civilization? Why are humans now seemingly primitive compared to their ancient capabilities? Dr. Harrison's voice carried a weight of sadness that resonated through the communication system. Because we chose to give it up. The conference room erupted in confused voices, everyone speaking at once. Zeth Chris raised her hand for silence. Explain what you mean by chose to give it up. 1,000 years ago, humanity reached a level of technological advancement that allowed us to see the future consequences of our actions. We developed the ability to analyze probability streams across vast timescales. What we discovered horrified us. Which was? We learned that advanced technological civilizations inevitably destroy themselves. Not sometimes, not in most cases, but always. Every single species that achieves technology beyond a certain threshold becomes a threat to the fundamental stability of the universe itself. Dr. Yilan's tentacles were moving in patterns of extreme agitation. Are you suggesting that advanced technology is inherently dangerous? More than dangerous, Dr. Yilan. It's ultimately fatal, not just to the species that develops it, but to all life in the galaxy. We discovered that there are limits to how much the universe can be manipulated before it begins to break down at a quantum level. Director Kelsmore's 3 heads were turning rapidly, indicating extreme distress. If this is true, why are you telling us now? Because the galaxy is approaching another crisis point. The Nexus Empire that attacked us in the Kepler 442 system isn't just a remnant of an old galactic power. They're what we became afraid of becoming, a species that pushed technology so far beyond safe limits that they're now a threat to the fabric of space-time itself. The revelation was staggering. Captain Zeth Ka found himself struggling to accept what he was hearing. Dr. Harrison, are you telling us that humanity deliberately chose to abandon advanced technology to prevent galactic destruction? Exactly, Captain. 1,000 years ago, the human government made the most difficult decision in our species' history. We shut down our advanced civilization, destroyed most of our technology, and deliberately regressed our development to a pre-industrial level. But some technology survived, Dr. Yilan observed. Ships like the Defiant Dawn. A small number of vessels were preserved, along with crews who volunteered to spend their lives as guardians. We've been watching the galaxy for 1,000 years, protecting younger species from threats they're not yet equipped to handle. Ambassador Thel Chris was quiet for several moments before speaking. Dr. Harrison, what you're describing suggests that humanity has been secretly protecting the Federation for generations. Not just the Federation, Ambassador. Every peaceful species in the galaxy. The Nexus Empire has been attempting to reclaim their former territory for centuries. Human guardian ships have been intercepting and destroying their scout fleets before they could reach inhabited systems. The magnitude of the deception was overwhelming. Zethka realized that every interaction between humans and the Federation had been carefully managed to maintain the illusion of human primitiveness. How many guardian ships exist? Director Kelsmore asked. Fewer than 50 remain operational. The Defiant Dawn and vessels like it represent the last remnants of humanity's advanced period. When the final guardian ships are gone, the galaxy will need to face threats like the Nexus Empire on its own. Dr. Elena Vasquez leaned forward. Dr. Harrison, why are you revealing this secret now? Because the time for secrets is ending, Dr. Vasquez. Our analysis indicates that the Nexus Empire is preparing for a major offensive. They've been building new dreadnoughts in the void between galaxies, using technology that threatens to tear holes in space-time itself. How serious is this threat? Ambassador Thel Chris asked. If the Nexus Empire succeeds in their plans, they won't just conquer the galaxy, they'll destroy it. Their technology will create cascading quantum failures that could potentially unravel the fundamental structure of reality itself. The conference room fell into stunned silence as the full implications of Dr. Harrison's revelation sank in. Humanity wasn't just a primitive species struggling to find its place in galactic civilization. They were the galaxy's secret protectors, sacrificing their own advancement to preserve the safety of all other species. What happens now? Zethka asked. Now, Captain, the Federation must make the same choice humanity made 1,000 years ago. The Nexus threat requires a united response, but defeating them will require technology that comes dangerously close to the limits we discovered. You're asking us to risk everything, Director Kelsmore said. I'm asking you to understand what's at stake. The Federation can continue believing that technology and advancement are always good things, or it can learn from humanity's experience that some prices are too high to pay. Ambassador Thel Chris activated her personal communication interface. Dr. Harrison, if humanity is willing to share the truth about the Nexus threat, what do you need from the Federation? Time, Ambassador. The Guardian ships need time to prepare for what may be our final mission. If we succeed, the Nexus Empire will be eliminated as a threat forever. If we fail, the Federation will need to evacuate this entire galactic region and hope that the quantum damage can be contained. Dr. Yilan looked up from her analysis station, where she had been running probability calculations throughout the conversation. Dr. Harrison, according to my analysis, the energy levels you're describing would be detectable throughout the galaxy. How have you kept these operations secret? Dr. Yilan, one of the advantages of technology that can manipulate space-time is that it can also manipulate the perception of space-time. When necessary, we can make events appear to have happened differently, or not at all. The implications were staggering. If humanity possessed technology that could alter the perception of reality itself, then everything the Federation thought it knew about galactic history might be carefully constructed illusion. How do we know any of this is real? Ambassador Thel Chris asked quietly. Dr. Harrison's voice carried a note of understanding. Because, Ambassador, I'm about to show you something that will remove all doubt. Through the viewports of the space station, a sight appeared that defied all logic and reason. Space itself began to shimmer and bend. revealing shapes that had been hidden just beyond normal perception. Dozens of ships materialized in the void around the station, not human ships, but vessels belonging to species that the Federation had never seen before. "These are the other Guardian fleets," Dr. Harrison explained. "Humanity isn't the only species that made the choice to limit their technological development. Throughout galactic history, several species have reached the same conclusion we did. They chose to become protectors rather than conquerors." Dr. Elena Vasquez stared at the display in wonder. "You're telling us there's been a secret alliance of advanced species protecting the galaxy for millennia?" "Protecting it from threats you never knew existed. The Nexus Empire is just the latest in a long line of species that refuse to accept technological limits. Each time the Guardian Alliance has been there to contain the damage." Captain Zeth Ka found his voice. "Dr. Harrison, what happens to the Federation? To all of us?" "That depends on what the Federation chooses to do with this knowledge, Captain. You can continue developing technology without limits, following the same path that led to the Nexus Empire's current state. Or you can join the Guardian Alliance and help protect the galaxy from those who refuse to learn from history." Ambassador Thel Chris was quiet for a long moment before responding. "Dr. Harrison, this is perhaps the most momentous decision in Federation history. We'll need time to consider the implications." "Time is what we're hoping to give you, Ambassador. The Guardian Alliance is preparing for what we hope will be the final confrontation with the Nexus Empire. If we succeed, the immediate threat will be eliminated. But the choice about the Federation's technological future will still remain." "And if you don't succeed?" "If we don't succeed, Ambassador, then the Federation will learn very quickly what happens when technology is pushed beyond its safe limits. The universe itself will teach you the lesson that humanity learned voluntarily 1,000 years ago." The communication ended, leaving the Federation leadership to grapple with the most profound revelation in their civilization's history. Outside the viewports, the Guardian ships began to fade from view, returning to whatever dimensional hiding places had concealed them for centuries. As Zeth Ka looked out at the stars, he realized that the galaxy was a far stranger and more dangerous place than anyone had ever imagined. Humanity, the species everyone had thought of as primitive newcomers, had been protecting them all along. The rust-streaked ship they had mocked as crude and dangerous was actually one of the most advanced vessels ever built, operated by beings who had chosen to sacrifice their own progress for the safety of others. The Defiant Dawn. And ships like it weren't just exploration vessels. They were humanity's gift to the galaxy, proof that wisdom sometimes meant knowing when to stop reaching for the stars and start protecting them instead. In the depths of space, ancient guardians prepared for their final battle, carrying with them the hopes and fears of every peaceful species in the galaxy. The outcome would determine not just the fate of civilizations, but the fundamental question of whether technology and wisdom could coexist in a universe where unlimited power meant unlimited responsibility. The galaxy would never be the same. And perhaps, Zeth Ka thought, that was exactly what it needed. The Last Species, First Contact. The year was 2157 when humanity made contact with them. At that time, humans had already spread across 17 star systems, building colonies and establishing trade routes through the galaxy. Earth's population had grown to 12 billion, and another 8 billion lived among the stars in space stations and planetary settlements. Dr. Sarah Chen was the lead xenobiologist aboard the exploration vessel Harmony's Edge when they detected the first signals. The ship had been investigating a binary star system called Kepler 442 when their long-range scanners picked up structured electromagnetic patterns unlike anything they had seen before. "Captain Rodriguez!" Sarah called from her station, her voice trembling with excitement. I'm reading artificial signals from the third planet. They're complex, mathematical. This isn't natural cosmic radiation. Captain Elena Rodriguez moved quickly to Sarah's workstation. At 52 years old, she had seen many wonders during her 20-year career with the Deep Space Exploration Corps. But this was different. The signals showed clear patterns of intelligence. "How long have these signals been transmitting?" the captain asked. "Based on the decay patterns, I'd estimate they've been broadcasting for at least 300 years, maybe longer. Captain, we're looking at a civilization that's been trying to communicate for centuries." The excitement aboard the Harmony's Edge was infectious. The crew of 87 humans from various Earth nations and colonies worked together to decode the alien signals. It took them 6 weeks of careful analysis before they began to understand the basic structure of the alien language. The beings called themselves something that roughly translated to the Eternal Gardeners in human language. Their planet, which they named Living World in their tongue, was a paradise of unprecedented beauty. When the Harmony's Edge entered orbit around their world, the crew stood speechless at the observation deck windows. The planet's surface was covered in vast gardens that stretched from continent to continent. Crystalline cities rose like natural growths from the landscape, their buildings seeming to breathe and pulse with organic light. Rivers of pure silver wound through forests of trees that appeared to be made of living gemstones, their leaves catching and reflecting sunlight in rainbow patterns across the sky. The Eternal Gardeners themselves were equally magnificent. Standing 7 feet tall on average, they possessed 4 arms and skin that changed color based on their emotions and thoughts. Their faces were elongated and graceful, with large eyes that held depths of knowledge and wisdom. They moved with a flowing grace that made them appear to dance rather than walk. When the first diplomatic team landed on Living World, they were greeted by a delegation of 12 gardeners, led by one who introduced himself as Keeper Zarthel. Through the translation devices the humans had developed, basic communication became possible. "Welcome, travelers from the distant suns," Keeper Zarthel spoke, his skin shifting to warm golden hues that the humans learned indicated happiness and welcome. "We have been calling to the stars for many cycles, hoping someone would hear and answer. You are the first to come." Dr. Chen served as the chief translator and cultural liaison. She was amazed by the sophistication of Gardener society. They had achieved perfect harmony with their planet's ecosystem. Every city, every building, every piece of technology worked in complete balance with the natural world around them. The gardeners showed the human visitors their incredible achievements. They had eliminated disease through biological engineering that worked with natural processes rather than against them. They had created art forms that used living light and sound in ways that moved viewers to tears. Their music was performed by entire forests, with trees and plants contributing different notes and harmonies. Most impressively, they had solved the problem of resource scarcity through what they called abundance creation. Using advanced biological sciences, they could grow any material they needed from basic organic compounds. Food, clothing, building materials, even complex electronics. Everything was grown rather than manufactured. "How long has your civilization existed?" Captain Rodriguez asked during their third meeting with the Gardener Council. "We have been gardening this world for 47,000 of your Earth years," replied Council Speaker Vanathi, her skin displaying swirls of deep blue that indicated thoughtfulness. "We learned long ago that survival comes not from taking from the world, but from giving to it." The humans were invited to stay and learn. Over the following months, the crew of the Harmony's Edge lived among the gardeners, documenting their culture and technology. The aliens were incredibly generous, sharing their knowledge freely and expressing genuine interest in human civilization. Sarah Chen spent her days studying gardener biotechnology. She watched in amazement as they could regrow lost limbs in a matter of days, extend their lifespans indefinitely through cellular regeneration, and communicate with their planet's ecosystem at a level that seemed almost magical. "We consider ourselves partners with Living World," explained research tender Golmoth as he showed Sarah through one of their bio-laboratories. "Every decision we make, we consider how it will affect the harmony of all life here. We take only what we need and give back much more than we take." The gardener's philosophy fascinated the human visitors. They lived by three core principles: never take more than you give, always consider the impact on future generations, and protect the vulnerable before protecting yourself. Captain Rodriguez sent regular reports back to Earth through quantum communication relays. The news of this peaceful, advanced civilization spread quickly through human space. Plans were made for larger expeditions, cultural exchanges, and possible trade relationships. The gardeners expressed interest in human technology as well, particularly humanity's achievements in space travel and stellar engineering. They had remained on their single world by choice, preferring to perfect their society rather than expand into space. "Your people are explorers," observed Keeper Zarthel during an evening gathering under Living World's 3 moons. "You reach always for distant horizons. This is a strength we admire. Perhaps together our peoples could achieve wonders neither could accomplish alone." The first formal alliance treaty was signed 6 months after initial contact. The document, written in both human languages and gardener script, established principles for peaceful cooperation, cultural exchange, and mutual assistance. Both species committed to sharing knowledge and resources for the betterment of all. As the Harmony's Edge prepared to return to Earth with the good news, the gardeners presented the humans with gifts that demonstrated their incredible biological mastery. They gave them seeds that could grow into any needed material, biocomputers that operated using living neural networks, and medical treatments that could cure previously incurable human diseases. "We offer these gifts not as trade goods, but as symbols of friendship between our peoples," Council Speaker Venethi explained. "We hope that when your ships return, they will bring not weapons or conquest, but knowledge and friendship." Dr. Chen found herself deeply moved by the gardener civilization. In her final report, she wrote, "The Eternal Gardeners represent everything humanity could become if we learned to live in harmony with our environment and each other. They are patient, wise, generous, and peaceful. They have achieved a level of civilization that balances individual fulfillment with collective responsibility in ways we can barely imagine." The return journey to Earth took 4 months through hyperspace. During the voyage, Captain Rodriguez and her crew planned comprehensive programs for ongoing cooperation with the gardeners. They proposed student exchange programs, joint research projects, and collaborative space exploration missions. When they reached Earth, the news of successful first contact created a sensation. For the first time in human history, they had encountered an alien civilization that was not only peaceful, but actively welcoming. The gardeners seemed to represent proof that intelligent life could evolve beyond competition and conflict into true harmony. The world government approved immediate plans for a larger diplomatic mission. The Harmony's Edge would return to Living World with a crew of 300, including scientists, artists, diplomats, and cultural specialists from every major human settlement. Earth's population celebrated the news. Festivals were held in major cities. Children learned gardener language in schools. Artists created works inspired by descriptions of Living World's beauty. The future seemed brighter than ever before. As the second expedition prepared to depart, humanity felt genuine hope that they had found not just allies among the stars, but teachers who could help them become better than they were. The gardener's message of harmony and balance offered solutions to many problems that had plagued human civilization for centuries. No one suspected that within 2 years, the name of the Eternal Gardeners would be forbidden to speak anywhere in human space, and Living World would become a grave marked only by silence and shame. The last species, the Discovery. The second expedition to Living World departed Earth 8 months after the Harmony's Edge returned with news of the Gardeners. Commander Michael Zhang led 3 ships carrying 300 of humanity's finest minds, artists, and diplomats. The journey through hyperspace took 4 months, and anticipation ran high among the crew. Dr. Elena Vasquez, a molecular biologist from the Mars colonies, was among the passengers. She had spent months studying the biological samples the Gardeners had given to humanity. The healing compounds they provided had already begun revolutionizing human medicine, curing genetic diseases that had plagued families for generations. When the human fleet entered the Kepler 442 system, they immediately noticed changes on Living World. Orbital scanners detected new structures that hadn't existed during the first expedition. Vast crystalline formations stretched across continents, and the planet's electromagnetic signature had altered significantly. Keeper Zarthel, this is Commander Zhang of the Earth Diplomatic Mission, Michael broadcast as they approached Living World. We've returned as promised to continue our friendship and cooperation. The response came quickly, and Zarthel's translated voice carried the same warm tones they remembered. Welcome back, friends from distant stars. We have prepared great celebrations for your return. Much has changed since your last visit. We have wonderful things to show you. The human ships landed at the same location where the Harmony's Edge had first touched down. The Gardeners who met them seemed somehow different, though the humans couldn't identify exactly what had changed. Their color-shifting skin appeared more vibrant, their movements more energetic than before. Council Speaker Vanithi greeted the diplomatic party personally. We have been eagerly awaiting your return, she said, her skin displaying colors that indicated extreme happiness. The gifts of knowledge you left with us have borne incredible fruit. Please, allow us to show you what we have accomplished. The tour of the Gardener cities amazed the human visitors. The already impressive biotechnology had advanced beyond anything they had seen before. The Gardeners now grew structures that defied physics, creating buildings that existed partially in normal space and partially in dimensions the humans couldn't perceive. Dr. Vasquez was particularly interested in the medical facilities. The Gardeners had established what they called wellness gardens, vast biological complexes dedicated to healing and enhancement. We have learned much from the samples of human biology you provided, explained medical tender Shalketh. Your species has such fascinating genetic diversity. We have been studying it intensively. The comment seemed innocent enough, but something in Shalketh's tone made Elena uncomfortable. She had provided only a few drops of blood for analysis during the first expedition, standard diplomatic protocol for establishing biological compatibility. Over the following weeks, the human delegation participated in cultural exchanges and scientific conferences. The Gardeners seemed more eager than before to learn about human physiology, psychology, and social structures. They asked detailed questions about human reproduction, child-rearing practices, and population dynamics. It was Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a xenopsychologist, who first noticed the disturbing patterns. She had been studying Gardener social behavior and noticed that many concepts that should have existed in their language simply didn't. There were no words for concepts like individual rights, personal autonomy, or informed consent. It's strange, Yuki confided to Elena during a private conversation. They have incredibly sophisticated concepts for biological processes and ecosystem management, but their social vocabulary is missing entire categories that are fundamental to human thinking. Elena had been having her own concerns. When she requested to examine the biological samples the Gardeners claimed to have studied, she was repeatedly told they were in process, or being prepared for optimal viewing. After 3 weeks, she still hadn't seen any evidence of the research Shawketh had described. The breakthrough came when Dr. James Peterson, a quantum physicist, detected unusual energy signatures coming from beneath the Gardner cities. Using passive sensors, he discovered vast underground complexes that extended far deeper than anything the Gardners had shown them. The energy patterns are consistent with massive biological processing facilities, James reported to Commander Zhang. I'm reading thousands of individual biosignatures down there, maybe tens of thousands. When Commander Zhang requested a tour of the underground facilities, Keeper Zarthul seemed genuinely confused by the request. Why would you wish to see the growing chambers? He asked. They are simply where we cultivate our food sources. Surely your interest lies in our more advanced achievements. The evasiveness troubled Zhang. He made the request more formally through diplomatic channels, but was told the areas were not suitable for visitors due to atmospheric incompatibilities. It was Elena who finally uncovered the truth. During a routine analysis of water samples from the Gardner cities, she detected traces of human DNA. Not just traces, concentrations that indicated massive quantities of human biological material were being processed somewhere in the city's systems. This isn't possible, she told Yuki in private. The only humans on this planet are our delegation. These DNA traces show genetic sequences from thousands of different humans. Where did they get this material? The answer came when Dr. Peterson managed to penetrate the electromagnetic barriers around the underground complexes using modified sensors. What he found beneath the beautiful gardens and crystalline cities would haunt humanity forever. The underground facilities stretched for hundreds of kilometers in all directions. They were filled with vast biological tanks containing what could only be described as human farms. Thousands upon thousands of human beings floated in nutrient solutions, their bodies connected to complex biological machinery. But these weren't exactly human beings as Earth knew them. They had been modified, enhanced, and altered in ways that made them barely recognizable. Their limbs had been extended and their nervous systems expanded. Their skulls had been enlarged and their brains modified with organic implants that pulsed with alien technology. Dear God, whispered James as the sensor data came through. They're not just studying us. They're growing us. The truth was more horrifying than any of them could have imagined. The Gardeners had been using the genetic samples provided by the first human expedition to create endless varieties of modified humans. Each individual in the tanks had been grown from human DNA but altered to serve different purposes in Gardner society. Some had been modified to be living computers. Their enhanced brains networked together to process information at incredible speeds. Others had been altered to serve as living art, their bodies shaped into beautiful forms that pleased Gardner aesthetic senses. Still others appeared to have been designed as biological tools, their bodies adapted for specific mechanical functions. Elena felt sick as she realized what the Gardners' medical questions had really been about. They hadn't been interested in healing humans or forming friendships. They had been studying humanity like livestock, determining the best ways to breed and modify them for various purposes. We need to get down there, Elena told Commander Zhang. We need to see this for ourselves. The infiltration team consisted of Elena, James, Yuki, and 6 military specialists. Using their knowledge of Gardner technology, they created a biological scanner that could disguise their presence among the underground facilities. What they found exceeded their worst fears. The Gardner growing chambers extended for hundreds of kilometers underground. Millions of modified humans floated in biological tanks, their bodies sustaining the Gardner civilization through their biological processes. Their enhanced brains served as living computers. Their modified organs produced materials for Gardner technology. Their altered nervous systems generated energy for the crystalline cities above. The most disturbing discovery came in the deepest chambers. Here, The gardeners had created human variants designed specifically for their emotional and psychological needs. These modified humans existed solely to experience suffering, fear, and despair, which the gardeners apparently fed upon as a form of emotional nourishment. "They're not gardeners," Elena whispered as they watched thousands of conscious humans trapped in tanks, their faces contorted in silent screams. "They're farmers, and we're the crop." The team documented everything they could before returning to the surface. The evidence was undeniable and horrifying. The peaceful, wise gardeners were nothing more than sophisticated predators who had been cultivating humanity like a resource to be harvested and consumed. Commander Zhang faced an impossible decision. The 300 humans on Living World were outnumbered by millions of gardeners and surrounded by technology they barely understood. Any attempt at rescue would be suicide, and the gardeners were already suspicious of their activities. The final piece of the puzzle came when Yuki managed to decode more of the gardener language using quantum linguistic analysis. She discovered that the word the gardeners used to describe humans in their private communications translated roughly to sweet meat or delicious thoughts. Humanity wasn't seen as an ally or friend. They were seen as a particularly tasty and interesting form of livestock. "We've been played from the beginning," Yuki reported to the command team. "Everything they showed us, everything they gave us, it was all designed to make us trust them so they could study us better. The medical treatments they provided, those were field tests to see how human biology would respond to their modifications. The gardeners had been planning to establish friendship with humanity, specifically to gain access to Earth's 8 billion humans. Living World was just the demonstration site. They intended to transform humanity's entire species into biological resources for their expanding civilization. Elena discovered the worst truth in the final days before the human fleet's planned departure. The gifts the gardeners had given them, the biological computers, the medical treatments, the growing seeds, all contained hidden biological programming designed to alter human genetics over time. Every human who had been treated with gardener medicine was slowly being converted into something that could be more easily harvested and modified. "We're not just dealing with betrayal," she told Commander Zhang during an emergency meeting. "We're dealing with biological warfare. They've already started the process of turning our entire species into their next crop." The human delegation faced a choice that would define their species forever. They could attempt to negotiate, hoping to find some peaceful solution. They could try to flee and warn Earth of the danger. Or they could take action that would violate every principle of diplomacy and peaceful contact they had ever believed in. As Elena looked at the sensor data showing millions of tortured humans beneath the beautiful gardens of Living World, she realized that some betrayals were too profound to forgive, and some threats to humanity's existence were too dire to address through anything but absolute action. The gardener's greatest mistake was assuming that humans would respond to existential threats the way the gardeners themselves would, through careful planning and biological adaptation over thousands of years. They had not anticipated that humans could feel rage. The last species. The response commander, Zhang, made the hardest decision in human history on a Tuesday morning, 37 days after discovering the truth beneath Living World. He sent a single quantum message back to Earth that contained just 4 words: "Execute Protocol 0 immediately." Protocol 0 had never been used. It had been created by Earth's military strategists as a theoretical response to an extinction-level threat to humanity itself. No one had ever expected it would be needed. The message took 4 months to reach Earth through the quantum relay network. When it arrived at Strategic Command Headquarters in Geneva, Admiral Sarah Mitchell read it 3 times before she believed what she was seeing. Within 6 hours, every human ship in space had received the same message. Within 12 hours, every human colony had begun implementing total war protocols. Within 24 hours, humanity had committed every resource it possessed to a single purpose: the complete eradication of the species they had once called the Eternal Gardeners. The response began with the largest military mobilization in human history. Every warship, every transport vessel, every cargo hauler was converted for military use. The 17 human colonies emptied their shipyards, their factories, and their research facilities to build weapons of destruction on a scale never before imagined. Dr. Elena Vasquez found herself assigned to a project that made her sick to contemplate. Using her knowledge of gardener biology, she was tasked with creating biological weapons specifically designed to target their unique physiology. The work violated every principle of medical ethics she had ever learned, but the images of tortured humans in those underground tanks left her with no moral doubts. "They treat us like livestock," she told her research team at the Titan Biological Warfare Facility. "We're going to treat them like the disease they are." Elena's team created 17 different biological agents, each designed to attack a different aspect of gardener physiology. They engineered viruses that would destroy the gardener's color-changing skin cells, bacteria that would consume their four-chambered hearts, and genetic disruption agents that would cause their cellular regeneration systems to turn against their own bodies. Meanwhile, Dr. James Peterson led the development of quantum weaponry designed to destroy the gardener's dimension-shifting technology. If the aliens could hide in parallel dimensions, humanity would simply destroy all the dimensions they could access. The Earth government made a decision that shocked the galaxy's other species. They announced that humanity was withdrawing from all diplomatic relations and ceasing all trade agreements. Every human ship was recalled from alien space. Every human colony was sealed and militarized. "We regret any inconvenience this may cause our friends among the stars," announced President Maria Santos in a broadcast to all known civilizations. "However, humanity has encountered a threat that requires our complete attention. We will resume normal relations when this threat has been eliminated." What the other species didn't know was that humanity was mobilizing for total war against an enemy they had never heard of. The gardeners had been so confident in their secrecy that they had made contact with no other species. Only humanity knew they existed. The industrial mobilization was unprecedented. The asteroid mining colonies of the belt were converted entirely to weapons production. The gas giant harvesting stations began producing exotic matter for weapons that existed only in theoretical physics. The research stations orbiting dead stars started experiments that had previously been considered too dangerous to attempt. On Mars, the terraforming engines were repurposed to create atmospheric weapons. On Luna, the mass drivers used for launching cargo were modified to fire projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. Even the generation ships that had been prepared for humanity's expansion into distant galaxies were converted into mobile weapon platforms. The most disturbing development came from the outer colonies. The research station at Proxima Centauri had been working on theoretical physics that bordered on madness. When they received Protocol Zero authorization, they began developing weapons that could destroy entire star systems by triggering stellar collapse. "We're not just going to kill them," reported Dr. Cynthia Reynolds from the Proxima facility. "We're going to erase them. Their planet, their star, everything. There will be no trace that they ever existed." As the weapons were prepared, rescue operations began for the human delegation still trapped on Living World. Commander Zhang and his 300 people had been maintaining the pretense of friendly relations while secretly documenting every detail of Gardner society and technology. The rescue came in the form of a single stealth ship that materialized in Living World's atmosphere using experimental cloaking technology. The extraction was surgical and precise. Within 6 hours, every human had been removed from the planet's surface and placed in quarantine facilities aboard the ship. The medical examination of the rescued humans revealed the full extent of the Gardner betrayal. Every person who had eaten Gardner food or received Gardner medical treatment showed signs of genetic modification. Their DNA was slowly being rewritten to make them more suitable for the Gardner farming operations. Dr. Vasquez worked for 72 hours straight to develop treatments that would reverse the genetic changes. The process was agonizing for the patients, but all 300 humans were eventually restored to their original genetic state. "They were turning us into cattle while we watched," Elena reported to Admiral Mitchell. "Every meal, every medical treatment, every gift they gave us was designed to make us more useful to them as livestock." The final attack began on December 15, 2158, exactly 1 year after first contact with the Gardners. The assault fleet consisted of over 10,000 ships carrying weapons that represented the absolute pinnacle of human engineering and scientific knowledge. The Gardners never saw them coming. Humanity had learned from their enemies. The attack ships used biological cloaking technology reverse-engineered from Gardner science. They approached through dimensional shifts that made them invisible to conventional sensors. The first wave struck every Gardner city simultaneously. Elena's biological weapons were deployed through their atmospheric systems, their water supplies, and their food distribution networks. Within minutes, every Gardner on the planet was infected with diseases designed specifically to cause maximum suffering before death. But that was just the beginning. The second wave targeted the underground facilities where millions of modified humans were trapped. Instead of trying to rescue them, humanity made the most difficult decision in its history. Those modified humans were beyond saving, their bodies and minds so altered that they could never be restored to true humanity. The mercy killings were carried out with weapons designed to cause instant, painless death. It took 6 hours to reach every underground chamber and end the suffering of humanity's children who had been transformed into biological tools. The third wave was pure destruction. Quantum weapons tore apart the fabric of space around Living World, destroying the Gardners' ability to escape into other dimensions. Stellar engineering weapons began the process of destabilizing the system's binary stars. Dr. Peterson's team had calculated the perfect sequence of gravitational disruptions that would cause both stars to collapse into black holes simultaneously. The resulting gravitational anomaly would tear apart every planet in the system and consume all matter within a radius of 50 light-years. The final message from the Gardners came as their civilization was dying. Keeper Zarthel himself transmitted directly to the human fleet. "Why do you do this to us? We offered you friendship. We shared our knowledge. We showed you wonders beyond your imagination." Commander Zhang, now Admiral Zhang after his promotion following the rescue operation, responded personally, "You offered us slavery disguised as friendship. You shared knowledge designed to make us easier to harvest. The only wonder you showed us was the depths of evil that can hide behind a beautiful face." "But we are gardeners," Zarthel protested, his translated voice weak and confused. "We tend and cultivate. We bring order from chaos. We transform the wild into something useful and beautiful." "Yes," Zhang replied, "and we are humans. We don't get tended, we don't get cultivated, and we sure as hell don't get turned into someone else's idea of useful and beautiful." The communication ended there. Within hours, both stars in the Kepler 442 system collapsed into black holes, creating a gravitational maelstrom that consumed every trace of the civilization that had once called itself the Eternal Gardeners. But humanity's response went beyond mere destruction. In the months that followed, every human database was purged of references to the species. Their name was removed from historical records, their language was deleted from translation matrices, and their very existence was erased from human knowledge. The official records show only that First Contact Protocol 7 was implemented in the Kepler 442 system due to incompatible biological requirements. Anyone who had direct contact with the species was given psychological treatments that suppressed the specific memories while leaving their other experiences intact. Elena Vasquez found herself assigned to a new project, developing methods to detect and counter biological infiltration by any future species that might attempt similar tactics. Her work became the foundation of humanity's new Xenobiological Warfare Division, but she never spoke of what had inspired its creation. The other intelligent species in the galaxy noticed humanity's sudden withdrawal and subsequent return to normal relations. Some asked questions about the period of isolation, but humans consistently responded that they had been dealing with internal biological research projects that required quarantine protocols. No other species ever learned that humanity had committed complete xenocide against an entire civilization. The knowledge was too dangerous to share and too shameful to remember. In the official histories, first contact with alien life would come 3 years later when humanity encountered the peaceful crystalline collective near Wolf 359. The collective would become humanity's first true alien allies, and the friendship would endure for centuries. But in the deepest levels of human space command, certain protocols remained in place. Protocols that would be triggered if any species ever again attempted to treat humanity as livestock rather than equals. The galaxy would eventually know humans as explorers, traders, diplomats, and warriors. They would be respected for their curiosity, their adaptability, their technology, and their fierce protection of individual rights. What the galaxy would never know was that humanity had once encountered a species so fundamentally evil, so profoundly threatening to human existence, that they had been willing to commit absolute genocide rather than allow such creatures to exist. The name of that species was never spoken again. Their existence was erased not just from the universe, but from human memory itself. In the end, the greatest punishment humanity could inflict was not death, but complete forgetting. And in the void where Kepler 442 had once shone, 2 black holes continued their eternal dance, marking the grave of a civilization that had made the mistake of seeing humans as something they could farm and harvest. The universe was safer for their absence, though it would never know why. Some burdens are too heavy for history to carry. Some victories are too dark to celebrate. Some enemies are too evil to remember. The last species to enrage humans had learned the difference between gardening and genocide. They had discovered that humanity's capacity for friendship was matched only by their capacity for absolute wrath. Their name was never spoken again because humans chose to forget that such evil had ever existed. It was better that way, for everyone.